Welcome to Cheques Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And we have David Boyle from Min. And this week we're talking about Kiwisaver 2.0.
Boyle, great to have you back. Second episode. We're now doing nicknames.
James, very cool. It's great. Well, I'm already here, so it's not to be back, isn't it? So,
I mean, there's lapses in time.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah. The illusion, the fourth wall shattered.
Breaking the magic.
We should have all changed shirts. So that
is a bit of a giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah. So in this episode, we're going to talk about Kiwisaver. We've done an episode on Kiwisaver in the past, but David, I know you write a bit for stuff. You're out in the market talking about financial literacy, financial education, and Kiwisaver is a big topic in New Zealand, isn't it?
Well, it's one that connects with over 3.3 million people, so there is a genuine interest. And from time to time, I do get the chance to bring some colour to it and a view. And I think there's things that we should be thinking about how we can improve it further. But look, as a whole, it is a great start and a wonderful way for New Zealanders to build up a savings pot for their retirement years.
Yeah, and I think we see a lot of things that are out in the market around Kiwisaver and some stats and these sorts of things, and it probably washes over just the average Kiwi because it's so out of sight, out of mind. And I think, personally, that's one of the benefits of Kiwisaver. It is so far out of sight, out of mind until you go to use it on something like a house deposit or something like that, and all of a sudden, hey, you've got this pot of money sitting there that you can access. But I think it's important we sort of break that down for Kiwis. So, David, why is Kiwisaver so important?
I think if we go right back to Sir Michael, or the late Sir Michael Cullen, who was really the architect or godfather, actually, of Kiwisaver, bless him. I thanked him so much from my own career development that he established Kiwisaver, because it was finally something I could get completely passionate about and know that would make a significant difference to all New Zealanders who participated. So having that, if we think before Kiwisaver was established, there were those that were very lucky if they were the company that offered a superannuation scheme. But for the majority of New Zealanders, there was nothing. And the products and types of services that were around in those days weren't necessarily as good as they could have been around long-term superannuation. Lots of fees, lots of cost. So having this centralised system and for Kiwisaver to be established that would be accessible to all New Zealanders was an absolute, great idea, because really it provides a way that it doesn't matter what you're doing or where you're working, you've got a central capability of contributing into a long-term investment scheme. And that's what it is. A lot of people think it's a savings account. It's not. But it's a great way to contribute for those years that you decide not to work in your retirement years. So
yeah. And it is moving into retirement. It is a lot of the time one of people's largest assets that they can sort of draw on. And I think New Zealanders have been pretty laissez-faire about that and sort of more focusing on the superannuation side of things. Like, hey, don't worry about it. The government's going to give me a contribution when I move into retirement, and that it'll all be fine. And James, you and I have discussed this previously, where it's not a lot of money that you want to depend on with the superannuation. It's good to get some other assets in there.
And look, in New Zealand terms, relative to other countries, we've got what I consider a really good foundation. The first pillar, which is New Zealand Super, it's it's easy to manage. It's very clear who gets it. The cost to administrate it is relatively low compared to other countries. But it's only a first pillar, and it's not going to. Even if you got your own home, I believe it would be very challenging for you to live off super either individually or as a couple, given the dollars that you're going to be getting.
If I can ask you a quick question around that, David, we've just done an episode recently around New Zealand Super.
Yes.
For those that are maybe, say, under 50, under 40, what will, in your opinion, if you look through the crystal ball, what will New Zealand Super look like when those people are retired?
It is the most contentious question when you're thinking about New Zealanders' overall well-being in retirement. The cost to GDP obviously is doubling in the next 10 years or thereabouts. So you have got a situation where there's those that are getting nearer to retirement that have planned to have super as part of their pillar of retirement. And then you've got this younger group which are going to miss out perhaps on that pillar if there's not a way to kind of offset that cost of savings and build up their own wealth. And it is. Should it go up? I mean, when I was at the commission, we recommended over 20 years that would transition to 69. 69, I think. No, 68. 68, sorry, it was to 68, yeah. So it would give plenty of time for those that were in a situation of building up wealth or paying off debt, and they could see in the future where it was going to be. And look, a lot of New Zealanders now, last time I looked at the stats, over 40% of New Zealanders are working full or part-time over 65 anyway, because we're an ageing population actually, and we actually need older workers to maintain the economy and grow it. So there's that potential. So the transition I think it was a sensible approach that got squashed by the current government, and for all, I guess, their reasons, it was something that wasn't palatable. But when you look at the basic numbers, it's got to get paid by something, and if we don't increase our tax take and productivity, then it could be something that will get either pushed back further. But I can't see it occurring in the next few years. Put it that way.
Yeah, I know when we're doing a financial plan, anybody that's under 50, we won't include New Zealand superannuation. Mike and I did a very quick calculation. If you're 65, live till 90, and you're a couple, the government's paying you $750,000 over your retirement. So it's a lot of money, and that is where, and probably a good segue into why Kiwisaver is so important.
Yeah, I mean, Kiwisaver is, for most New Zealanders, their best chance of building wealth over a long period of time through a regular contribution, and that's from their salary. So we know that if it's taken out before, the chances of them kind of over time realising or losing that contribution is, it's easier to kind of stomach rather than see it come out of your bank account and think, oh, where's that going? You know? So it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind. And, the way it was built in, Kiwisaver relative to other countries, you're essentially using inland revenue to capture those contributions. So it's a really efficient way for then providers to offer a scheme that will allow New Zealanders to pick or choose their provider, but also if they leave their employer, then their Kiwisaver follows them to the next employment. Where if you look at Australia, there's an industry alone in just trying to find people's money. I mean, we've got billions of dollars that are lost, and the cost of that is just outrageous. So we've got a great foundation, some really good elements of Kiwisaver. The contribution coming out of your pay, the member tax credit. Look, I mean, who wouldn't want an extra $500 a year for nothing? I mean, that's really it's free money, but a lot of people are missing out on that at the moment. So the foundation is brilliant, but we now need to genuinely take it to that next version of 2.0.
Yeah, I actually got a really nice email from the Australian government not too long ago. Very surprising, actually, telling me that one of my super funds had been transferred to them to look after because it had been whittled down by fees so much that it's like $200 now or something. I was like, I have no idea where this is, what this is, where it's come from, or even how I would start to get this back. And like instantly I was like, okay, well, that's gone.
You could probably use that to pay for a mustache grooming kit.
Thanks, James. Yeah.
So if we were to quickly just touch on the main benefits of Kiwisaver, if you are a salaried employee, your employer will be putting a minimum of 3% into your Kiwisaver. You will get to choose as a minimum 3% going into your from your salary all the way up to 10%. The government will put in $500 a year. If you're not doing that, you're pretty much just throwing $500 in the bin. And then the other piece is trying to have some financial stability long term, not being dependent on New Zealand superannuation. One of my favourite sayings, get rich slowly, are the real benefits of Kiwisaver. But David, if I can ask you a question, and something I'm seeing more and more, and there's a lot of stats around how many small businesses there are in New Zealand, how many self-employed people there are. Should self-employed people have KiwiSaver?
Yes, is probably the simple answer. And I know that there genuinely are those that are contributing. When you're self-employed or you own a small business, and let's face it, New Zealand is built on small business. So there is a lot of employers, business owners out there, maybe either single shingle or they've got a couple of staff, and the value that they're building is in their business, and that's the right place for them if they are confident that they can grow a business that will, at some stage, when they reach retirement, will give them an asset that they can sell. The thing is, you've got to make sure that it's going to be valuable enough and it's going to be worth enough that you can take money from that company and then live off that in retirement. I think it's always good to have a plan B, and KiwiSaver for those individuals is a good place to start as well. Just regularly contribute out of your income directly through the income from the company is a great place to do that. And you're getting for every you put your $1,043, you're going to get $521 every year until you retire. So I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? Look at it as a tax benefit if you need to think it from a business perspective, but just looking at it as free money is a good way to look at it as well. The other thing that I think is incredibly concerning and impacting KiwiSaver at some point is how New Zealanders are being employed as well. And by that I mean not all New Zealanders are on salary and wages. And the legislative arrangement with KiwiSaver is that, if you're on salary or wages, it is expected that the employer will match that contribution for you, and in good faith that you're able to, get that contribution through salary and wages from your employer. So you put in 3, your employer puts in 3. The way New Zealanders are being employed, I think, is impacting this a little bit. So if you're a contractor or you're signing up in a situation where you're getting, you're maybe running, or feels like you're running your own kind of business, but you're a contractor to a company. It could be media, it could be construction. The obligations of the employer aren't necessarily there in the good faith element. And there are cases, and I know this definitely, that employers will negotiate, and supposedly in good faith, that your KiwiSaver employer contribution is in your salary. I would argue that probably a lot of New Zealanders may not be fully aware that that was the situation. But I've got no factually based information, but all I know is that we've got 1.2 odd million KiwiSaver members saving less than $20 a week in KiwiSaver today. Yep. So that would suggest that there's I can't believe that they're all self-employed. I can't believe that they're all not working. So there's got to be some answers around this, and it'd be really, really important, I think, for us to kind of find out why this is happening.
Yeah. And I only have a sample size, really, of the clients that I talk to. But, if you're a salaried employer and you've got 3% of your salary going in, 3% of your employees chucking in, and then you're getting the government tax credit, and then you're contributing more, and then you're getting the growth over time compared to somebody who their total contributions, including the government tax credit, might be $1,500. One of the big things I see for self-employed people is there's not that incentive to put more money into their KiwiSaver, so they're only putting the minimum in, but they're also not saving to the side or putting money elsewhere, which means, from what I'm seeing, that self-employed people's KiwiSavers are significantly lower than those that are salaried employees.
Yeah, and look, that may be determined because of their personal circumstances and how they're investing in the business. I think, the beautiful thing about KiwiSaver is it comes out of your pay before you get it, and it's on a regular basis. It's like paying yourself forward, and, that is the way to accumulate wealth for those that kind of don't have an interest in building wealth through individual investments or in other ways, and for most salary or wage earners, it's the easiest way, and easy is really the first step to people actually getting and building wealth over time. The main thing then is ensuring that they know who their provider is, which I think most would hopefully do now, but we still have an auto-enrollment process that some who make no decision will be allocated to a default provider. But more importantly, what fund or asset allocation, gosh, using a bit of jargon, but where their money's invested. Yeah, I know. take points off for that. But yeah, really, where their money is invested is going to have a massive impact, not necessarily the provider that they're with.
Yeah. And then, so when people are making an active choice between the different providers and that sort of thing, what should they be thinking about? Is it fees driven? Is it returns? Is it, hey, I like the color of this brand. Hey, it's my bank, so I'll just stick with that. What are some of the key sort of points you'd look for there?
Well, if we follow the regulator's view and MB as well in respect of the work that they've done, and they've done an incredible job to get fees down, and there's been some good leadership in that area. At the end of the day, though, it can't be just fees. If it's just fees, then we should just have one Kiwisaver scheme for everyone. Yeah. Actually,
and that's it.
And why not do that if that is the only basis of people's decision or choice around Kiwisaver? So, I think I wrote an article just recently. It's like following Henry Ford's view of Model Ts. You can have any colour you like as long as it's black.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It really is. But I know people want choice actually, and there may be other elements or support around advice. Choice of investment, and I don't, the debate around active investment and passive, we won't even go there because it's boring, and it really is. I mean, at the end of the day, New Zealanders are going to get value out of Kiwisaver by where their money is invested, and on top of that, what are the services? And it could be active management to try and get a better return than you would from the index, for example. But what are the other things that they can provide that will add value? And, a set and forget approach with Kiwisaver is not necessarily the right outcome for most Kiwis over time.
Yep. Yeah. So what do you think some of those, if somebody's going, okay, I'm with my bank because they put a form in front of me and I signed it. That might be tough on the banks because obviously they've got some compliance to meet. But it certainly has some customers explain it to me. If they're going, I want to make an active choice on the provider I'm going to be with going forward, what do you think are some of the things that people should be thinking about when making their decision?
Look, I don't think people wake up most days thinking, I wonder how my Kiwisaver's going. It's a bit like insurance. You don't wake up thinking, I need some life insurance today. That'll be exciting.
Yeah.
So, taking the fun factor out of Kiwisaver, if you do grab someone's attention, that's what I try to do sometimes in my articles. It just might get them to prod and think, oh, okay, that makes a bit of sense. Where am I today? And really probably having a chat with your Kiwisaver provider is a good start, because if they can tell you what you're invested in, how it's being managed, and what the outcome could be over time, you're halfway there. If they can't do that, or you can't get them on the phone, or you don't understand what you're in, that is when you probably think there's be some alarm bells, or at least for your own perspective, find something that might work for your own personal circumstances. So, a lot of New Zealanders are DIY, and that's fine. And investment is, we're seeing more and more of that with the access of other investment platforms as well. So that's fine. But as the value of Kiwisaver increases, there'll come a time. I thought it was a value of a second-hand car, because it's kind of the next biggest asset you have relative to your house or your boat. If you do go down that road, it would trigger, well, I actually need, this is meaningful now, so I need to get some better information about it. That hasn't necessarily happened, and we've gone through a time, most of, since the credit crisis, Kiwisaver was launched, markets were negative, but we were investing in a falling market. It was the best time to launch Kiwisaver. The trouble was most New Zealanders were in conservative funds.
Yeah. And the other thing, I think, in addition to making an active choice, and you alluded to it before with your jargon around asset allocation, is choosing the right fund, which the fund at the end of the day is, in my opinion, more important than the provider you're with, is going, Am I a conservative investor? Am I a moderate investor? Am I a growth investor? Do I understand what those things mean? What is my time frame to invest? And something I see quite a lot, and just as a hint for all those watching, if you have a third of your money in conservative, a third of your money in moderate, and a third of your money in growth, that's not more diversification. You're just moderate because you end up in the middle. But making that active choice around, and this might be where advice comes in or online tools, what fund should I be in? Making an active choice. If you are 25 and you think I'm a conservative person, I'm going to stay in conservative, that might be the right thing for you. But the thing I would encourage you to do is just educate yourself. Make sure you understand what that means. Make sure you understand what the terminology conservative means as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is that. Look, for people to get up and read about Kiwisaver, they need to see how it will impact them personally, and seeing where their money is invested is a really good start. So your provider should be telling you what are you investing in, what are the shares, what are the companies, is it globally or domestic, is it bank deposits, or is it property. So getting a picture of that and where that money is. We know those that have a little bit more growth assets, being shares and property, over the long term will get a better outcome. There's no two ways about that. Yes, it'll be a bumpier ride, it'll be a bit more roller coaster, and there will be times when you need someone to hold your hand. Even, crikey, at the last COVID, slight market correction where we saw the market drop nearly 30% in a week or two, that was pretty terrifying even for those of us that are in the industry. And not knowing what the future was going to bring, no one would have guesstimated that it would have bounced back and gone higher again after that event. It just makes no sense at all, but it did, and that's the market. So being in the right fund for your personal circumstances, the one thing that you need to think about is, when do you think you're going to need that money? And it's not 65 probably. In some cases it might be, but it should be later. So you can, take a little bit of a longer term view than thinking, 65, then I should put my money into bank and in the cash. And so that's just wrong, I think, because you want to draw down that capital, but you want your money still to be working hard for you. And what happens on that day that you decide to take it out and the market's dropped 15%? I think it needs a little bit more thought, and that's where a plan actually really helps to kind of make the most out of Kiwisaver as well.
Yeah. So we've covered off a bit about what Kiwisaver is, why it's important, what we should be thinking about when we're looking at the different funds or providers and that sort of thing. I want to go down a little bit of a different track. David, what should Kiwisaver 2.0 look like? If we gave you free reign and I said,
it's a bad idea. Yeah. Can I just say right now, that's a bad. Don't do that.
And I said, you've got 5 years, 10 years to transform it into what you think the perfect solution would be for this. What would be some of the key changes that you would make?
Yeah. So there are a few things that I think that we could really make a difference that would impact New Zealanders' well-being, not today, but in the future, dramatically. The first beef I've really got is the lack of contributions going into Kiwisaver for New Zealanders. To be honest, before we think about what are the future benefits, we need to understand why people aren't saving. And, the obvious one will be, well, they're not getting paid enough. But if you are getting paid and you're in Kiwisaver and you're not on a contribution holiday, you will be contributing and you're missing out on that 3% pay rise essentially through your employer. That is, unless your employer is not meeting their legal obligations. And I'm not saying that that is the case, but I think we need to understand why. So an investment by government, by even the financial service providers that are offering Kiwisavers, understanding why that is there. Look, the second thing is hardships and people wanting to get money, their access to Kiwisaver for an emergency. Particularly through COVID, we saw a massive increase on that demand. I'm a very firm believer of developing what I call a sidecar account where people can use Kiwisaver, the mechanism to collect contributions, but have it attached to the side of Kiwisaver to deal with those emergency outcomes. If you lose your job, your car breaks down, or some maintenance is required on your property, whatever the case is, that you've got access to that. And it's, again, using that principle of out of sight, out of mind, and it fills that bucket. Once that bucket is full, then everything else goes into your long-term plan. So you're not dipping into your long-term investment with a short-term outcome around that. And I think that would be an incredible way, not necessarily to help Kiwisaver, but it will help New Zealanders get out of toxic debt, credit card debt. We've been in such a low-rate environment, yet that debt is still incredibly high, and the way it's eating away your, contributions and your value of your money is just toxic. So payday lenders, all that kind of stuff, it'd be lovely to see them go. And I guess the third part with Kiwisaver is actually getting, and this is 3 parts to this question, the final thing is have access to good quality advice in a way that New Zealanders want to access it, whether it's by phone, by digital, or by face. And that's where Kiwisaver providers are going to need to really look at how they can beef that up in a cost-efficient way. Getting access to that, I think, is going to be incredibly important. And I guess the next thing is thinking about also how do we slowly, once we've got people regularly saving at that 3, to notch it up a little bit higher. Because if you are getting your 3% from your employer, that's 6%. We know Australia's going to 12. So we're a long way away from that. And so if we can slowly and just build it into 0.25% regular annual increases that you wouldn't even notice, and you get to that whatever number that you want, and you choose it. Is it 7 or is it 8? Is it 9? You'll work it out because you have a better idea what that value will be in the future. And again, it happens automatically, so you don't have to do anything, which is a brilliant thing, I think, and it will help New Zealanders kind of build that a greater contribution rate than they maybe are or doing at the moment. And I guess the third thing is making sure that Kiwisaver is a great scheme, but it is locked in. So if something really, it's very hard to get access to. So my suggestion is then also thinking about investing outside Kiwisaver and getting some qualified, authorised advice that will help you build this plan and I guess build the opportunity to not only rely on Kiwisaver but your third pillar, which is your own savings, and bringing it all together and putting it into a dashboard that you can see the impact of your spending and saving through your provider. And I think this is where Kiwisaver providers and banks will be working very hard to show you if you stop spending money on coffee as much as you were doing, what will that actually impact my future outcome? And I guess having digital tools and information that will help you make better decisions around your spending will be an incredible benefit to that as well. It's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel like that could be an episode in itself and probably a further rabbit hole we could go down. So there's some ideas around what Kiwisaver might be in the future. Once again, I just really encourage you, if you haven't made an active choice around your Kiwisaver provider, if you don't know where it is, as David mentioned, people don't wake up in the morning thinking, I wonder how my Kiwisaver is going. But please make that active choice. Please give us a subscribe to us on YouTube, review on Apple, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks.